So by now, you all know that Helen and Nelson and Becky and I went to the first seminar of our Missional River initiative this weekend. Now, the Missional River is an initiative to teach us how to be in our community, how to become deeply rooted, involved in what's going on in Blanco, part of the pulse of what is going on here. And while we were there on Friday, the speaker asked us a really important question. He said, "What makes your church? What makes New Hope remarkable? What is it about New Hope that makes people stop and take a second look? What's different about us than other churches here or around Texas? In other words, what is our purpose here? What is God's mission for us? What is our calling in Blanco? Is our goal, is our purpose to get enough people and enough money here so that we can pay the pastor and keep the lights on? Is our goal to get more people sitting in the seats on Sunday morning? Is our goal to stay comfortable? To maintain what we already have? Because if these are our goals, if this is the highest purpose that we can find for ourselves here, we may as well turn off the lights, lock the doors, and not come back. Because God's callings are never about staying comfortable or maintaining the status quo. God's callings are rarely about those who are called, but about those who are to be served. Listen to what Jesus tells the Pharisee in our text today. He says, when you have a meal, don't invite your friends and your family and those who are of equal status with you, for they'll just invite you back and you'll stay on that equal footing. He says, no, invite the poor, invite the oppressed, invite the outcasts, those who will never in their lives be able to repay you for the kindness that you do by inviting them, fellowshipping with them, and serving them. Jesus issues this command, this call to the Pharisee in the company of other people who would have been invited to that Pharisee's house because they could invite the Pharisee back to their own homes, or because the Pharisee had been invited before. Jesus issues this command in a group of people who had grown up their whole lives, learning about the importance of honor and prestige and power. The group gathered there would have known how important it was that they were above a lot of other people. They would have spent their lives pushing down the ones below them on the social ladder and crawling their way up. Jesus speaks this command to a man who would have spent a lot of time and effort making sure that he didn't go to places where he wouldn't want to be seen, that he didn't talk to people he wouldn't want to be associated with. Jesus speaks this command in a society where honor and shame were of utmost importance. Just like at the beginning of his parable when he talks about going to a wedding feast and making sure you are not shamed. It's much better to be exalted than to be shamed. And yet, Jesus says, don't follow the things you have been taught. Don't work in your invitations to lift yourself up, to invite those who are like you. He says, do exactly the opposite of what you have been taught for your whole life. Invite those who will cause you shame. What he's saying to the Pharisee is, be remarkable. Be different. Stand out. And he says this in a society where standing out in that way would have been the exact opposite of what any person would want. And yet, that is the call he issues to the Pharisee, and by extension, all those who are gathered at the banquet with him. Because Jesus himself is remarkable, right? We follow a remarkable God who calls us to do remarkable things. But those things that we are called to do involve risk-taking. They involve changing. They involve not being a part of the status quo, but about doing things that might be scary. Just as Jesus did many things that were risky and sometimes scary. Jesus was remarkable in the company that he kept. He hung out with sinners, with tax collectors and prostitutes, with people who had leprosy, with people who couldn't take care of themselves. Jesus was remarkable in the way he went about his life. He healed those who were sick. He fed those who were hungry. He cared about those who were in need, and he served all the people who rightfully should have been bowing down in worship and service to him. And in his most remarkable move, Jesus dies on the cross. His death itself wasn't really that remarkable during Roman rule. Thousands of people hung on crosses. But Jesus dies not because he commits a crime, but for the sake of others. Jesus dies so that death can have no more power. Jesus dies so that the dead can live again. And then he calls us to be remarkable in similar ways. He calls us to live in ways that look silly to our society. He calls us, like he called the Pharisee, to not worry about our own honor and prestige. He calls us to not worry about the things that the world tells us are important. How much money we have, how big our building and our land is, how many people we can count sitting around us. He calls us to be worried about success measured in a much different way, in the people who are served, the hungry who are fed, the sick who are healed, the lost and the lonely who are loved and cared for. Jesus calls us to be remarkable, to take risks, to change, to follow him. And so we too are called to be risky in the company that we keep. In the actions that we take, we are called to be risky even to the point of dying for the sake of others. So what does that look like for New Hope? What makes us remarkable? What makes us different? What makes others stop and take a second look? Because when we do remarkable things, we point to our God who is remarkable. We point to the God who says, death is no more. We point to the God who says, you are forgiven. We point to the Lord whose arms are open wide to the world, who says, come, follow me, and find new life, mercy, grace, and love. So let us go